With the release of Secret of the Mimic, Talesgames theory has been put to rest in a sense, but in some ways, now that we're able to pull ideas from the books directly, without having to focus on whether or not they're a perfect lineup with the games, it makes things easier to understand in the long run. At least for me. Now for today, I want to discuss the connection between Secret of the Mimic and Dittophobia. See, I think that the Dittophobia story was our precursor into one of, if not more of, the lore drops that would be unveiled in Secret of the Mimic. But what do I mean specifically by this? Well, it has to do with Dollie. Not just Dollie, but she's what really created the motivation for this idea in my head. We could also point out Big Top or Rocktopus though if we wanted to. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Alright, so in the Dittophobia story, this poor kid named Rory is having a terrible night where all these creatures are coming at him, very FNAF 4-esque. So like essentially just imagine the FNAF 4 animatronics coming after this kid. And this repeats for a few days with very mundane moments of awakeness during the day where Rory eats, he walks around the house and tries to open all the different doors and find his parents, before he ultimately gets super sleepy and just goes back to bed. The story gives us multiple days like this, kind of just getting us used to the routine that this character is going through. Anyway though, one day he wakes up, his eyes shoot open. He feels different than he usually does when he wakes up. He realizes that this last night he was sleeping, there were no nightmares this time. He hadn't had any dreams at all. He looks around his room and realizes the room looks way different than it normally does. Everything's super dirty, dusty, wallpaper coming off the walls. Clearly like nobody has been in this house for a long time except him. I can't remember if I mentioned, but Rory is literally a kid. He's about 7 years old, or that's what we're led to believe, and that's what he thinks. But as the story progresses, the big plot twist is that 10 whole years have passed, making Rory 17 years old. So he's been in this sleepy cycle for a decade. And anyway, so he explores around the fake house and finds a metal door. He goes through this door and realizes that essentially there's been some kind of gas that's been pumped into this little house where he's been living for the last 10 years. He finds out that he's essentially been an experiment someone has been taking notes on, like he's some sort of lab rat or something. He also finds out that the gas in the gas tanks were hallucinogens, which are explained as drugs that made Rory think he was seeing and doing things that he wasn't actually seeing or doing. It's a crazy story, but the big implication for FNAF is that this gas was the source of his night terrors. The nightmare characters aren't at all what they appeared to be. In reality, they're just life-size costumes hung on flimsy metallic skeletons. It was all just an experiment to study the effects of ongoing fear in children. As the book explains, whoever was behind the experiment wanted to see what happened if a child faced the same horrors night after night after night with no real life during the day to balance the awfulness of the nightmares. So Rory ultimately realizes that whoever was doing these experiments has been absent for about 10 years, which might imply that this is when William got spring-locked and was thus unable to return to his experiment, which means Rory eventually would have just died if the machine pumping the gas hadn't stopped working on this particular day. But the story gets crazier because Rory, as he's exploring around, ultimately wanders through the sister location area. He comes across Ballora standing there, he goes through the Funtime Auditorium. Clearly he's exploring the sister location without knowing it. So we again have confirmation that the FNAF 4 room and sister location are closely connected. And with the idea of Murray's Manor being owned by William, as well as buildings being built over it, and many of the ideas and characters from the manor being reused or repurposed for things we see in the Pizzaplex later, I want to connect one more piece from Secret of the Mimic to this idea. See, when I first read Dittophobia, I didn't understand why they put the story in the Pizzaplex series of books. Shouldn't a series of books called Tales from the Pizzaplex be based on the Pizzaplex, not on sister location? But think about it, Help Wanted 2 is full of sister location characters. They have much more of a role than I thought that they would in that game, and I wasn't sure why they did this. And while I still don't fully know the extent of why, I think some of those plot points are still yet to come out, I do think there's a good chance that whatever was left of the manor was reused, repurposed by William for his underground bunker, where these tests would take place. And after realizing all this, it became very apparent to me that FNAF 4, as well as sister location, are very closely tied to Security Breach. To expand on those ideas, I'm going to link 2 videos down below that I think are very useful in helping to understand this whole phenomena. The first video is by Cryknight, and it's the Freddy Fazbear theory, which essentially goes over how all of these locations are connected. The second video is by Bronze Films, where he's theorized for quite a while that Murray's Manor is underneath the Pizzaplex, which again ties these things together in a very neat way. Both of these creators do an excellent job explaining these things, and I feel like the way that they present the material just makes a lot more sense than it would be if I sat here and tried to explain it further, so I'm going to leave it at that. And so anyway, I want to bring up Dollie today. The reason I want to bring up Dollie is because of how she gets around the manor, zipping this way and that. Let me read you a section of the Dittophobia book and tell me if this seems familiar. Oh, and this is once the gas has stopped flowing into the house and Rory gets to see the characters heading towards his room, but without the drugs affecting him. So like everything's old and dusty and whatnot. A grinding whir filled the hallway, and the ratty, yellow, chick-like creature began moving. Rory's nightmare was coming to life. Rory's throat tightened. His legs suddenly felt rubbery, and he shifted his feet to keep his balance. When his feet moved, Rory felt the hard metal of the railing in the floor. He looked down. "It's just a mechanical monster," he said aloud. Lifting his gaze, Rory looked ahead at the holy yellow chick. "You're not real," he said to it. The chick didn't reply, of course. It couldn't. It was a machine. Feeling stronger now, Rory widened his stance and faced the chick up close. He could see how fake it really was, as it glided out of the closet and down the hall toward Rory. Rory once again shifted his gaze to the floor. He could clearly see that the chick's feet were attached to rollers that skimmed along on the railing set into the floor. "You can't hurt me," Rory said to the chick. Again, the chick did nothing but what its machine programming told it to do. It rolled forward along the railing until the railing curved toward Rory's bedroom door. The chick's metal feet clanked against the railing, and the chick disappeared into Rory's bedroom. So there you have it. These characters are moving around on rails, just like Dollie does in Secret of the Mimic. Just like Big Top even does. Even Rocktopus has a little track to move the character forward and backwards. I really think one of the main reasons this story showed up in the Pizzaplex series was not just to hint at sister location being relevant, but to show us a sneak peek of how things from the Manor end up weaving their way into some of these locations as well, providing some awesome foreshadowing into how these particular aspects of the story would directly tie to the larger lore. It's like finding Easter eggs in video games, but with direct connections that flesh out an ever-expanding FNAF universe. And while I know railings aren't like some Edwin original idea, although it's not that far-fetched, he did invent recycling after all, for me it just kind of makes more sense that William either repurposed some of the rails that were already at the Manor, or he at least took the idea and reused it for his own experiments and tests. It doesn't seem like it'd be as costly, and you've already got nearly everything you'd need for it. But there was one more thing I found really interesting about this story. Rory starts looking for a generator towards the end of the story, and when he finally finds it, the description of this generator is very interesting to me. While generators aren't something new to FNAF either, I personally think it's worthwhile to point out the color of the generator. See, in Security Breach, the generators have a more modern look/style to them. They've got the cool Helpy logo on there, they've got the purple and red look to them, and so now what I'd like to do is compare that generator to how the generator in this book is described. For context though, the generator is hidden behind part of the wall near the fridge in Rory's house, and the sound is muffled by rubber put in front of it. Let me just read you the description as Rory unearths the generator. "At first, the rubber didn't give, but when Rory leaned away from the island, yanking hard, the rubber made a squishy crunching sound and tore loose. Immediately the growl of an engine filled the kitchen. Rory fell back on his butt, a big chunk of gray rubber clutched in his fists. Tossing aside the rubber, Rory looked into the island cabinet, right at a faded orange generator. The generator was vibrating. It was chugging along steadily. Rory immediately shifted back to his knees and studied the droning machine. The generator wasn't big, maybe 3 feet by 2.5 feet. It was probably heavy though. Rory reached for its metal frame and started to tug on it. Yes, it was heavy, very heavy. So as we just looked at the generators from Security Breach, we saw that those ones were red and purple. But this generator is the same color as the Murray Manor generators, and the height of the generator seems relevant as well. This could absolutely be a coincidence, but to me it stands out that the book mentions the color here at all. It seems like unnecessary detail, unless it's tied into the same foreshadowing idea that the Murray Manor is built under the Pizzaplex, which ultimately does connect this story back to Security Breach. It reminds me of that post that Steelwool made on Twitter a while back, showing us a picture with Help Wanted 2 and Security Breach, and the post says 2 adventures, 1 Pizzaplex, which may mean nothing more than these 2 stories games taking place in the same location. But since FNAF is often foreshadowing things, and the fact that we see a lot of sister location characters show up in Help Wanted 2, could this be implying something more? Does Secret of the Mimic story take place in the same area? This is definitely just me speculating, but after reading the generator's description, it really made me pause for a minute. And that's mainly what I wanted to share for today. As always, thank you for watching. It's been a really fun month just catching up with people in the comments, hearing your thoughts and ideas on stream, etc. Feel free to let me know what you think. I'm really not here to judge, ever. I'm here to discuss. Feel free to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below. And with that, I hope to catch you all later. Bye!